One of the things that separates a good website from a great website are animations. When there are subtle animations that bring a website to life, that really adds a different depth than one that's very static. So today I'm going to take you through how to create CSS animations through two different rules. What we're going to go over is how to animate a button on hover, how to create an animated star just like this. And we're also going to do a more complex animation where I show you how to do keyframes, where we can do a more complex animation like this. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the first example. Now, in the first example, I'm going to show you this without the animation, and then we're going to add the animation in. So as you can see, if I hover over my button, I'm going from an instantaneous blue to an instantaneous green. Now, this isn't smooth, and this is definitely not what you'd see on a polished site. Now, there are simple animations that we can do with the transition property, and then there are more complex animations that we'll get to later. So for now, let's talk about how to use the transition property to transition between our base blue and the green that we want to display on hover. In order to use that, what you're going to do is basically add your transition property, and then you're going to tell it what you want to transition. In this case, we can say background color here because that's what we are transitioning, or we can say I want everything to transition, and that's fine. And then you tell it how long you want that transition to take, either in seconds or milliseconds. So in this case, if I want 0.2 seconds, I can say that, or the same thing can be expressed as 200 milliseconds, and that works as well. And then you can also, if you want to, tell it how you want the animation to happen. There's a couple of easing functions. So you can see here, you can use ease in, ease out, or ease in out. You can play with those and see which one feels best for the particular transition. Now let's see what happens when we hover over this button now. So do that. And as you can see, now I've got a nice smooth transition between the two. Maybe let's lengthen it a little bit so that we can see it a little bit better. Let's make this transition happen over half a second. Okay, and you can see that nice smooth transition between the two background colors. So this works really well. One common mistake that front-end developers make, especially when they're getting started with animations, is they put their animation on the hovered state. So if I switch this from the base state, my base button, to my hover, what you'll see happens is it works really well when it's hovered, but as soon as I unhover, it doesn't transition back. And that's because this rule only applies on hover. So it will do the 500 millisecond transition, as you can see here, but as soon as I unhover it, that rule goes away and it has a very quick transition back to the base. So you always want that to be on the base class or the base selector that is going to the transition state rather than the other way around, because you always want that to apply. Now let's go over to example 2 and take another look at how to use a simple transition rule. As you can see in example 2, right now this works really well, where if I hover my star, it turns into this extra grinny face, and it also turns slightly to the side. And if I unhover it or put my mouse somewhere else, then it goes back to the regular smile. This is a really cool little effect that I saw on a website recently that I recreated with my own SVG here, but let's go ahead and see how this is created. So let's take a look at the HTML and CSS that we've written to understand how this is working right now. So as you can see down here, we have a wrapper div, and then we have two images. One is our star.png. That is the base one that you see right here. And then when we hover, you get the star smile. Now I've taken out the transition so that we can reapply it so you can understand how it's happening. But essentially we're transitioning between the unhovered and the hovered state. So when I move my mouse out, this is what we get. And when I move my mouse in, then we're getting the hover star smile.png. So in our CSS, what's happening is we have a wrapper, and it's we have a transform rule. So we're rotating it a little bit to the left. And then when we hover it, we rotate it that same degrees to the right. And we're also showing and hiding one or the other. So the extra smiley one with its eyes closed is display none by default. And then when we hover our wrapper, we hide the star that you're seeing now, and we show the one with its eyes closed. So you can see how that's happening. And let's look at this once again to see how that happens. So when I hover, I'm seeing that. So how do we go between these two states, as in where is the base class that we need to add our transition property to. In that case, it's going to be our wrapper, because we want the transform to happen between our base state and our hovered state. So as you know from the last example, we need to add our transition property here, and we need to say what we want to transition. We're going to say everything. We want it to happen over, let's say, half a second again, and we can choose an easing function. Again, I'll just say ease right here. So let's see what happens when we add that. And there we go. We get this nice ease between those two. So essentially what it's doing is it is animating this property, the transform, and then this can't be animated. You can't animate between a display none and a display inline. So that's happening immediately. As you'll notice, as soon as my mouse goes in there, you instantly see the other picture. And as soon as I pull it away, you instantly see the original. So that is happening immediately because that property can't be transitioned. Now, if we go to example 3, we have a much more complex animation, and I can't do this with just a simple transition. Now I need full-fledged animation. So let's look at how we're going to build this one. Okay, as you've seen in the earlier animation, what we want to do is we want to take our green box and we want to move it within our red box. Let's first understand the HTML and CSS that's written. So we have this wrapper. That's what you're seeing the big red border around. And then you have your green box inside of it. That's the one with the background color green, as you can see. And then we set our height and width. We set our border position relative. And the one inside is position absolute, with a height and width and a background color as well. Now we have an animation. We haven't done anything to our animation, but we have our animation rule here. And what we've done is we've defined the name of the animation, how long we want it to take, and in this case, how long the timing function that we want to use, which is infinite. If we only want it to happen once, we can do that. If we want it to happen a couple of times, we can do that. Or we can just say that it iterates an infinite number of times, which is what we want here. Now we need to start defining our keyframes, or the things that we want it to do as it moves throughout the animation. So the first thing we need to do is come up here and we need to have a from. This is at animation start. And of course it's going to start in the position that we want, which in this case is top left. Now, every single keyframe beyond this one, we want to define in percentages. So when it's 25% of the way through, we want it to go to the top right. When it's 50%, we want bottom right. And when it's 75% through, we want it to go to the bottom left. And then of course at 100%, we want it to go back to its original position. So as you can see, 25%, we can see that left 400 pixels, top 0. At 50%, we go left to the right and to the bottom using our left and top properties. At 75%, we're almost all the way there, and we can define our 2 or 100% on our keyframe, and that's going to take it all the way around. So this is for complex animations. We can define exactly what we want our element to do, and in this case, we are adding it to the thing that we want to move. So we're applying these rules in an animated way so that it's going from one to the other and transitioning from those. I hope that this helped you. If it did, make sure to like this video. And if you're learning HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and beyond, be sure to subscribe for more videos just like this. I'll see you in the next video.